Hi, welcome to Vets Chatting with Granny Lisa. Sorry for our technical difficulties, but I think everything has been restored, and I have my wonderful guest and friend Daniel Faust here, and he is going to share with us his story of him being in the Air Force reservist and also his creative projects that he has going on that I've had the pleasure to be in or part of one of them. So, Daniel, go ahead, please, and let's start over.
All right. So Daniel Faust with $10 cheap headphones that work better for interviews. And I am an Air Force veteran of 23 years. I've had 7 different jobs within the military. We don't have to go through all that again, but from aircraft maintenance to admin personnel to mental health to now a training manager, which is like a training NCO. I
Mhm.
worked with all branches of service, did 4 deployments before getting out of active duty, and now been a reservist for 11 years of a total of 23 years of service as of October 3rd. Uh, about 11 years ago, we made the transition, as we talked about, veteran transition, but that's BS. It's actually a transformation. It took me almost losing jobs and going homeless and losing my marriage to go over and to realize we need to transform and not just transition out. So took me another 3 to 5 years to work through my marriage, and that's a book called Leave No Marriage Behind. You can go get a copy of that. We're also doing a revision of that. And we also decided to start working exclusively with veterans. In fear, we were working with marriages at first, but we're like, now we exclusively work with veterans and first responders. And this collaboration project of Leave No Veteran Behind was birthed out of the pain and the mess and the trials that we went through. So we'll go more through that on the next question, but that's a quick summary about me.
Okay, so I just because I'm nosy, and I've had this subject before with several other veterans on the transition out, that they felt that they were not prepared, that resources that were supposed to be available were not, and basically you had like a team of people around you while you were serving, and now all of a sudden your go-to team is gone. And so, if you had any kind of PTSD or medical or anything like that, they've had horrible time in adjusting. So what was it that really started the spiral for you?
The spiral for me, I think, was is that, and I think it's for everybody. It doesn't matter if they got in the 80s and 90s, 2000s, even 2023, is 2 things. One, it was lack of resources. So the earlier you got out, like in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, we didn't have a lot of resources. Now it's still information overload. You go from totally supported to totally gone the next day. Like you literally
Mm-hmm.
hand in your ID card and then it's over and that's
Right.
it. And the problem of it is that now some people are working the transformation thing, like myself and others. I have army buddies that are trying to do a warrior battalion, that giving 6 months, before you're not getting out, but they give you that, hey, you're not in your MOS anymore. You're just in this battalion. You can go to work and make that transformation. But transformation is hard because you go over and you do 4, 6, 8, 10, 20, 30 years, and then you're just like that, just
Yeah.
gone. Yeah, you're there, but you're not. It's kind of like right now for me, like if I'm a government employee right now, full time with the reserve, and that's why I'm doing both. If I'm not prepared to go and they do a government shutdown in a couple weeks, everything goes and the resources go and all the people go over and go. So, but this is happening on an individual basis. That individual is going from like their own personal government shutdown in a sense.
Exactly.
If there's millions of people going through it, you have the support and everything else, but there's 200,000 individual people each and every year that is getting out of the service, but they're all individuals getting out. It's not a collective
Mm-mm.
That's where I see that it was a struggle. And sometimes we get cocky in ourselves and think that everything's going to be okay. And we underestimate what the transformation is going to be because we
Okay.
don't go back. If we go back, that's where we get stuck. So
Mm-hmm.
for me specifically, I thought my business was going to be set and everything else. And when I left active duty, I not only left the station that I was at, I left the state and moved to Arkansas, and I rushed in to say, hey, I should be able to execute a full business and be operational in 3 to 6 months. Yes, I had a $17,000 windfall because of the separation. But the thing is $17,000 is nothing. So, and didn't have anybody to glean off. And I was just gleaning on what information I could go over and get. And the internet is a pantheon of information, which is great if you discover it. But
Right.
without somebody navigating you through these trials and having that mentor, there's some really great programs that do that nowadays. If
Right.
you're at 1 out of 200,000 that's leaving the active guard or reserve, you're just it's a hopeful and a wind shine. It doesn't matter if it's an educational track, a business track, going back to corporate America track. The there's a good amount of us that go over and survive, but the majority of us are not thriving. And then you have the people that are also not surviving, and then it depends on the circumstance. And when you don't know the people and you can't trust them because you went from a community of everybody to a community of one, which is self, you don't know who to go and trust. You might have your family, and then if you add mental health, that's just a whole
A whole
another
nother
game.
set.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's one of those things that we each of us as we've gone through our trials to show on how to go over and do that. And that's what Leave No Veteran Behind is all about, is sharing those stories. Mine was a financial, emotional roller coaster. Yours was marital, military, and everything else. Kurt Lodger he was financially awesome, but relationally, it was a totally different story. Robert, totally our co-author, Robert totally just went over and got really hurt from the Marines and totally negated from the community for 30 plus years. He was a great entrepreneur, but relationally, he was disconnected. So we share those stories to say, hey, you're not alone. We're not leaving any of you all alone. And when we
Right.
collectively together go over and come together, then we can weave the tapestry to go from surviving to thriving.
I like that. So now you wrote Leave No Marriage Behind,
Yeah.
and now you have created Leave No Veteran Behind.
Yes.
And I think we've got the book up there.
Mhm.
And that is the finalization of the cover.
Yep.
So we're very excited about that. So from the beginning, you and Robert talked and decided that you were going to do a book, but you were going to do it differently.
Yeah, drastically differently. So I'll go a little back. So when I got out in 2013, I didn't even think myself as being an author. I knew I wanted to speak. I knew I wanted to teach. I knew I wanted to help out marriages. In Arkansas, with that little bit of cash flow I had, I hit 250 churches within a 90-day period. Phone call, email, in person, combat boots, khaki pants, button-down shirt. That is not a church outfit, just so you know. That is a military outfit in civilian clothes. I lied to myself, and I almost ran out of money and then had to go back to work. So I've been through 70 different jobs between 2012 to 2019, but it was in 2016, before I had a major debacle, and we'll talk about that in a minute, that I went over and somebody asked me from Australia, they wanted to come to the United States to go over and do their authoring. So I'm an entrepreneur. I was looking for work, and I'm like, oh, this is a great opportunity. I can grow my stuff and everything else. So I escorted her in the country. Me and my wife and her husband, we both met like several months before this happened. And I was her escort across the country as she was building this authoring brand called the Ultimate 48-Hour Author. So if you're wanting to really learn how to author fast, Natasha Dedman, Ultimate 40-Hour Author. If you forget as you're watching the show, because 92% is going to go out of your brain, just send me a DM. I'll send you the book. So this book, so I just traveled across the nation with her, going over and helping growing her brand.
Right.
So got to my last stop, which was my hometown in Arizona at the time, and I dropped her off. And then she went to New York and then did the last bid, and then she finished up her tour. She got back with me a couple months later. She's like, "Hey, I'm going to Vegas and I'm doing this tour for the book. And do you want to go publish your own?" I said, "Natasha, I know how to read. Your book is very easy. An eighth grader can go over and execute their book. But some people want that person." Well, she's like, "Well, I really want you to go over and author, and I really want you to come." So she gave me a great deal, and then I went out to author that first book because I was already going to author a marriage book because I just saw there's 86,000 marriage books out there. How do we navigate marriage? Well, I took the best of the best and just gave you like a tactic guide on how to go over and do that. It's under revision right now. My wife's revising it, but literally we did that. So that birthed, I'm like, what other books could I go over and do? Because there's a lot of communities that are left behind. Marriages are left behind. Families are left behind. We feel all alone. And Leave No Veteran Behind was always in the back burner. So when I met Robert W. Jones at the Military Influencer Conference last year, that's when I thought, yeah, MIC. So we're going there again. So if you are going to the Military Influencer Conference, we'd love to go over and meet you. But we have 4 days. So definitely book in advance because time's going to be quick. And I was the #1 influencer last year, virtually speaking. So we talked about it. And then I said, I want to do collabs differently because Robert does some great collabs. So if you are an early writer, you definitely want to get with Robert W. Jones, get in the Art of Connection, write your gratitude message. You can go over and publish that. If you need a deal, come hook up with me. We got a special veteran deal. Again, that's a DM. So I just told him, I said, I want to do things differently because most collabs work this way. You get a bunch of people, they go write their stuff, and then they go over and they maybe do a quick ceremony or like New York's Times Square or whatever, or big or small, whatever, it's in between. But the only people that make money are the 2 names on there. So when you look at Leave No Veteran Behind, you'll see the names. You see the forward, and then you see mine and Robert's name. Most of the other names are usually not on there. And if they're on there, they're usually not getting royalty. So we wanted to go over and rewrite the script on that. So we strategically went over and priced it to veterans, low cost in there. And we said, like, based on your tier, you're going to get a percentage of royalty because the goal is to get the message out there. Yes, we still make a little money, but the thing of it is that we give the majority of the revenue back to the veterans. So we basically, me and Robert go over and give between 50 to 75% of the revenue based on the split of like what package you buy into. And then we keep the remainder. And then we kept building from there. So now we're also building an apparel brand. We're building other options. So we want it to be an entire ecosystem because most authors don't make money on their books, #1. If they do a collab book, they're hoping for clout, but they don't know how to leverage it. And then we also built the mastermind to go over and to teach those authors on how to leverage those opportunities because you could not be great at IT, you could be not great at writing or anything else, but guess what? Through competency and confidence, and over time, you become that person. Mm-hmm. You live out what you are. So you will become that. So the only thing that breaks that script is going and doing that, and then the mindset. So we wanted to build that confidence builder for people to go over and publish. I know Eunice is publishing her book now. I know Dave Nordell's got his recent book out there. I know other people that are publishing their next books. And that's what we hope to go over and to do is to help you as a catalyst to go over and do that. But you're also making revenue. So that's how we built the model differently. So you can grab those QR codes because that'll probably be the easiest for your members is that, hey, if you can't remember a long link, these QR codes right here, you can scan with your phone and grab either the paper copy or the digital copy. And that's also how we did a little things different too.
Yes, I am part of the book. And so I am one of those individuals that absolutely had no clue, no training, never wrote anything in my entire life, and definitely grammar and sentence putting together, no clue. I was not taught that. And so I have to say that it has been an experience. And because of the way you guys have it set up and the feedback and the classes and going over everything, the Zooms, and just learning, but also the one-on-ones and the encouragement and the confidence builders has made it huge. I think I can do another book myself.
Yeah.
I mean, I would never have said that last year.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing is that's what Natasha did the same thing. Natasha, when you read her book, The Ultimate 48-Hour Author, it teaches you to keep it fun, to keep it fast, and to still go thorough with the book. A lot of times, a lot of us might be just natural born speakers, but we're not naturally born writers. And the people that are naturally born writers are not
Mhm.
naturally born speakers. But the
Right.
thing of it is that there's so much education out there in the sense of how to take a writer and make it a speaker. There's a whole entire speakers bureau and everything else. But vice versa, if someone's a natural speaker, having to write, yes, you go to English class and everything else, but how do I take my gift and go amplify it, but in a different modality? So, like I said, I can jump on any stage. I remember you said backstage, hey, do you need any prep? I'm like, no, I've done this tons of times. But when it came to the book, it was like, I thought I was going to have to go through those same headaches when we published Leave No Marriage Behind. I thought, I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to learn grammar and all these syntax and all these other things. And this was in 2017 when AI and all these other things didn't exist. She
Mm-hmm.
made it really simple. It's like, hey, you got a mouth? Use it. And then
Mm-hmm.
you go over and use that to record. Some of our authors use that method. I know me and Marilyn, for hers, we literally did an interview. We went on StreamYard, recorded the interview, brought it into transcripts. She scrubbed it initially, used like Grammarly and other pieces of software, and then our editors will then do the fine tuning. So even if your skills are not great, you can go over and especially nowadays in 2023, there's only less than 1% to 2% of authors. Even when you look at Amazon, it's like everybody's like, it's so huge, or Barnes and Noble or Ingram Spark or all these things. You can go and author. And if you don't want to author by yourself, hey, come with us. Me and Robert are going to do another collab book. Me and Dr. Ken are going to do another collab book. It's going to be structured a little bit differently. We're going to have an extra layer of people that are just, hey, I want to get my simple message out there. And then, hey, there's another level of like, hey, you're getting ready to get a message out there and you actually want to build it as a business. So you can go over and do it either way. And it's a beautiful thing that we're able to go over and do this. So Leave No Veteran Behind is the experiment of that. And this is not just going to be a one and done book. It's going to be a series of those stories, because the more stories that get out there, the more transformation, because we're transformed by stories, not by content.
Right. And I did not realize that the publishing company that you guys are using, that it's 2 years that they're going to advertise our book. And
Yeah.
I was like blown away. I was like, are you kidding? That alone is just mind boggling, because I never even knew that would be a thing. I
Yeah.
just
And now,
figured all whatever. I don't know what I was thinking.
yeah, and that's why we wanted to rewrite the script differently. So Dr. Ken Rocham is the one that did the forward. A fantastic forward is the one that picked that up. So that was the blessing. He's a veteran himself, Army veteran. I think he was an Intel, if I remember correctly, or logistics. Again, so many veterans trying to remember names and stories. But the thing of it is that we met through another potential collab, and he's also a publishing arm. So we're still doing all the logistics, but he's blessed us with marketing. Like, he's helped us to get on the New York City Jumbotron. So hopefully your audience, if they want to come see us, is December 6th through the 8th. We're going to try to get as many authors from the book out there as possible. You also go over and he's also trying to arrange book tours and everything else. Like, we were only going to do a year, but he's helping us amplify even more. And that's the things that we do differently. We say, hey, here's the minimals we give, and here's the bonuses that we give. It's not to overpromise and under deliver. We want to go over and we want to under promise and over deliver. That's why we want to go over and do that. Because a lot of people get disappointed, especially when they go over and they author and they go through a publishing thing, and then they're like, oh, I got to go do marketing. Oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. We're going to do it as the best level as that we can. And as more revenue comes in, we're going to amplify that voice. but we never wanted to go over and say like, hey, I was going to get you on a New York City Jumbotron. That was a blessing that came, and then we're able to pass on. So
Right.
so that was a really cool thing in there, is as the networking and connecting going. And that's how then we also teach you on those opportunities, and we don't hoard those connections. Like, hey, if anybody wants to go to Dr. Ken Rocham and go to Perfect Publishing because that's his brand, hey, you go with it. We want to complete your mission. We don't want to compete. That's how we're going
Right.
to go over and win, is we're going to complete people's missions. And that's what Leave No Veteran Behind is about, is that if you're all doing better than me, it means I did my job well.
Right. And I think that's important. It's not about ego, it's about touching other veterans' lives. And there's so many different veterans that are doing veteran, uh, 501s and reaching out to other veterans to help them in different ways, with trips and one-on-ones and marijuana or cannabis, and it's been amazing. So the unity, I think that you said, that when you get that transitioned out, the veterans community is rebuilding by making our own outside group of veterans and helping each other.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that we come into this world, we don't come in alone. And that's the difference. There's the rare occasions, of course, but you have a mother, you have a father, and let's say you have extended family and whatnot. Usually when you're 18 years old, yes, there could be brokenness, but you're not alone. And even when you go over and go out, like when I send my kids out, I'm like, yeah, I have plans. Yes, it's gonna threshold. Hey, it's gonna be baby nest, kick you out, but I get to be your safety net because the Lord is my safety net. So in that particular regard, but as a veteran, sometimes when we get out, because everybody's focusing on the mission of the military, when you get out, it's like you're like the baby bird and you just don't know where to go. And if you just had somebody like food's over there and then help you to go over and do that instead of go through the rough,
Mm-hmm.
then it
Mm-hmm.
would be a lot smoother transition, and actually would be a transformation, because we can't just leave ourselves behind. I'm like, there's going to be differences, there's going to be values, beliefs, everything else, but hey, the one thing we uniquely have is that we're veteran, and then we can bond
Exactly.
together on that and go move forward.
And that's everything that we, all veterans, all branches, were taught. You don't leave anybody behind. That's drilled into us. So why would it change after service? And for a long time it had. I mean, what do you think about um, we have our Vietnam veterans
Mm-hmm.
and how they were treated. What do you think our veterans now that are coming out, how the public is reviewing them?
I think the public is doing better. I met a lot of people that have gone over and helped. It's just the problem is that you don't have the handoff. As the Vietnam, we totally, as a nation, just dropped everybody off and just let it be. Now we need to learn how to take that handoff from one place to another to go over and do follow up. So let's pretend, for example, an extreme example, just to give on a handoff: mental health issues, PTSD, suicide, homicide, whatever you want to call it. When you go initially in that hospital for 3 days, 7 days, 28 days, you don't just go cold turkey after you get out. You don't just go like, had 3 days, I got enough meds, I'm not thinking bad in my head, time to go. Usually you have a community of care, continuity of care in the hospital, and then they hand you off to an outpatient doctor. And then it's systematic over time. We need to have that in the veteran community, but we need to find it specifically curtailed for that particular veteran. If that veteran is going over and, let's say, 65 years old, already has dual retirement, set the money and everything else, it's, hey, following up on a semi or annual basis and whatnot, and seeing what services, because a veteran's only going to go out to one, maybe two organizations when they get into dire straits. I went to 600 agencies because I almost been homeless 4 separate times. But I'm not the normal veteran, and it's not to brag. It's just that God gave me a tenacity to go over and to fight so I can fight for others. So I'm the one just hitting that. But when you get broken, you're going to go to one, maybe two
Right.
organizations, and then that's it.
You went to 600 veteran owned
Just
communities?
nonprofits, different
Oh,
places. So I almost,
okay.
yeah, so not veteran. It's not specifically veteran specific, but overall, it's like there was like between Arizona, Washington, and trying to remember the location, Arkansas. Yeah, I either called, emailed, or went in person as I was struggling those agencies, and that's the other string of the problem is that not everybody is ready to complete missions. Sometimes they're competing. I'm not going to name specific organizations, but I had 2 organizations that went over and did the same thing. And they went over, and I'm like, why don't you know about you when you run out of money? And they're like, no, they're our competitor. And I'm like, it's no,
Yeah.
it's a completion. It doesn't matter. See, my view is different. If it's for profit, nonprofit, whatever it is about completion of mission. If you have something that's captivating, product, service, e-commerce, whatever it is, nonprofit helping, you just get out there and you share, and those particular people that will be attracted and pulled into the fold. It's the same thing when I went out for this book. I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna tell everybody about it, and then allow them to go over and decide. And if they go over and say they like, hey, they don't like it, they don't go over and buy it, it's no skin off the back. Maybe it's just not in their right season, right time.
Hmm.
So, and that was the same thing. So we need to learn how to complete missions. But yeah, it was civilian and military agencies, VA, and everything else. And it was like, even went to one place and they're like, why don't you have this list? So I don't have to go to more agencies to go to more agencies to go to more agencies.
Hmm.
So it was just one of those things. But like I said, the average veteran in a crisis, electrical, marriage, rent, homelessness, sexual assault, crime, whatever it is, one, maybe 2 resources, and that's about it. And then they go off. So we need to be that community to say, hey, I don't need to be number one, but I need to if I can't be number one to help you, I need to do a great handoff to resource number 2. So that
Exactly.
means you're being helped. So
Yeah, and that's the thing I think with other people doing things the veteran owned, 501s and everything else is um, sharing. Like you said, I I think it's awesome. Most of them haven't. We don't have like even a listing or anything online of what's out there, what's available. Um, I mean, you could Google, and then when you Google like veteran, you know, organizations, some of those that are listed are no longer available. And
correct.
so you're, like you said, if a veteran's only doing 1 to 2 reach outs,
Hmm.
and especially if they have PTSD, they're going to get frustrated and say, no, I'm done. I'm not going to, no, this should already be available and for me to go and take care of it, even with the VA. And unfortunately, that's a biggie too.
Yeah. So I think the problem of it is that there is some major resources. So I don't want to go totally dime it down because I've been through them. So 211.org is the first resource for civilians and military. So if you go to 211.org or dial 211 on your phone for overall help, electric, rent, it can also do mental health too, but I'm just saying they will go over and do that. The problem of it is that no one else has those resources. So if you go to the VA and they do have helping resources in the VA, it's hard for their community to go over and to get all those resources. There's also military one source, but when so many people are trying to be that source, and then they're so busy and they get caught up in the minutia that no one is an actual conglomerate source. So when you go on the internet, then doing that. So I called resources. I did 211.org. I did Military One Source. I did Wounded Warrior Program, did Operation Homefront. I've done, there's several others. I'm trying to remember all the names, but
Right.
I've gone through them, and sometimes they would give me a list and they would go through and then they would give as best as they can. But then when you go to those people, like, I have a list, and I'm like, why didn't I get the list from the people that I was with? I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah,
I'm
there is
like,
none.
yeah, so that's the hard part. So our long-term goal with Learn and Live is to connect people to thrive from the prayer room to the boardroom. And sometimes there's resources that we're not going to say we're the ultimate resource either, but we're going to do as best as we can as we go over and grow is to have those cells and hubs, because that's the other part. When you do a national conglomerate and they have to do so much work, I'll just give you as an example for me. I manage 9 units with my coworker at the job, the military job. We have 55 different job types. We have 9 different units. We have over 700 people scattered in 9 different geographical locations. 2 people. 2 people.
Yeah.
So it's the same model that happens when you do that. So you got to have these hubs of places that manage per the counties and get really intimate with that, and have a hub that goes over and reports back and just says, hey, if I was, let's say, 211.org, or let's say the VA, I'm going to go call the nation hotline, then I'm going to direct you to the state, then I'm going to direct you to the county, and that county team that is managing those resources for the county, what is available to go over and do that. So, and we as veterans need to stay connected in the community, because you might know a resource that's maybe not connected into that internetwork yet, and do that. Because the one thing that I say, and I make this as a joke, is that women are a better network than any computer network, because you have the Women's International Net, WIN. They always win. So I get more of my resources from women than I do in any other internet resource. If I want to go find something, want to know about something, do whatever, if I'm usually connected to a woman, I'm going to win and get to access that resource. We need to take those same skills that women have been doing for hundreds and not thousands of years and do the same thing in the veteran community and have that win type network.
Yeah, I agree. And I think my partners in our podcast feel the same way, that it's not about ego. Sharing is caring. And so we want to spread the news about that. Let's get back to you being the teacher, moderator, holding the whole gang together. You have 12 personalities, 12 different types of egos, and also having to manage what they're writing. How do you break it up, or how do you manage that to where they're still all feeling very number one?
Yeah, the first part is that knowing your load. That was the other thing too, because a lot of collab books will sometimes grab hundreds of people, and it's not a bad thing. But if you really want to go over and serve and minister to people, I like the numbers like 3, 12, 70, and 5,000. 3 is your inner circle, 12 is the people that you're regularly working with, almost discipling, ministering, and doing that. And then they have 70, which is like, that outer circle. 5,000 is the people we're outreaching to with the book and everything else. So that's no reason why I chose no more than 12, because I know I couldn't give one-on-one service if I did more. And even as we build other collabs that might be bigger, it's like I build the model of like, hey, how long is it going to be? How do I go over and serve and everything else? Also, 12 was easy to serve in the sense fiscally, because when I started doing the math, I'm like, if I give max amount of revenue at X and then I times that by 10, and then, with bonuses and everything else, okay, everybody's going to win and everybody's going to have a little skin in the game. The other part of it is that you got to go over in big approach. I wanted to give big building blocks. So when I taught off the Ultimate 40-Hour Author. I said, hey, you can ghostwrite it, you can screw the writing by doing recording, or you could go over and type it out. So you could go over and do that. So that's another way I went over and did that, is giving you guys 30,000 foot and saying the ultimate goal is, hey, write in your own style, talk about your journey, give at least a couple points. I preferred 3 superhero tactics, tips, techniques, whatever you call it, that you learned from your life. So it made it real simple instead of going over and specifically narrowing it down to there. So it made it a lot easier. So then I could just take what I've learned, because I'm also a behavioral consultant. I'm certified in the DISC model. I knew each of your guys' personality styles. So when different people were going in different directions, and then I started seeing them back and forth, I knew the reason why it was going over and happening. And then I had to sometimes had to make, an executive decision. So, and then I also knew why some people weren't answering and some people were quiet and different things. So I was able to adjust to that. And then I gave the freedom if they wanted to follow up me. So that's why I made the chat. I also gave them 4 hours of consultation. So if they needed that extra hand holding, and just learned a lot from seeing other people doing it, because Robert's just finishing up his collab today with The Art of Connection, the third book. It just launched into an ultimate video. They had 200 guests in there and the authors and everything else. There would have been no way I would have did the same amount of work and everything else. He had to do it differently. So he had to really go 3,000 foot to uplift everybody, compared to, hey, I can give you 30,000 foot, but I can get down into 300 with the individual. So Robert's more of about like the logistics and operations on the sense of the marketing. He's going to add another layer to that. And I was the hands-on hand person because I was the outgoing person. So that's another reason why I was able to go over and manage it. And ADHD helps. So I always see the chat. I always see the chat. So I'm even seeing the chat in our private chats right now on the thing. And I'm seeing the comments in between. I mean, I used to do this for a living. I used to do digital TV shows and StreamYard. So these types of realms, this is my natural gifting. So I think that's the reason why it really thrived. And we had really great people that they all weren't taking all my time, and they all weren't just nothing at all. So it was a great balance. If I had 12 people that were always like, and I need like hand holding every 12 seconds, it would be overwhelming. If I had 12 people doing absolutely nothing, it would be underwhelming. And it'd be like, hey, I need to get the ball going. So, and then also incentives that we did too. So each week we give a different incentive as we're uplifting the brand. So, and yeah, so that made it really wonderful in that particular regard.
Okay, good. Do you have a favorite?
Do I have a favorite author? It's like asking, is a favorite child. Okay. So I'll use my children, for example. None of them are my favorite. Which person do I get most along with? I get along with Trinity the most. I will always choose to love every single one, but Trinity naturally personality style is best. I mean, if I had to say a person that I do, like, let's say, get along the best, it would be Marilyn, because I've had the longest relationship with. I knew Marilyn way before everybody. So Marilyn's one of the original ones, and she's actually in our other collab, Leave No Believer Behind. So she's been a client before. Now she's on authoring on the book, and and we've had a lot of similarities, and she's gone through similar traumas that I've gone through. So when you become a favorite, it's just what is the closest to you. So it's okay having a favorite, but you love on everybody equally,
Right. I know, but that's what I always like to put everybody kind of like in different questions.
Yeah, I'm not going to rack and stack all the authors and say, based on 1 through 12, who do I like and which ones? No, I mean, I love each of them in their own special way, but who do I naturally connect with best is like Marilyn, because of the relationship in the past. And also Robert is a deep relationship that I have too, because we're working partners. Yeah. So those two, it's just like when you it's like if I had the same amount of time and intimacy and everything else, it's like, hey, I can go over and grow those relationships. So we'll have those opportunities in New York, we'll have those opportunities in coming to your cities to go over and do the book launches and everything else. And also with Dr. Ken to go over and to help us. So, but yeah, it's, hey, I'm going to love you all, but that's one lie that we all say. No, you can have a favorite child, but you love on them there. It's just because it's just your natural personality style. It's like, hey, you're not my favorite because of this, but what do I favor in you in that particular regard? So we need to live that in reality, that we're always going to have favorites. It's like a favorite location. Hey, what location's been to? It's just an honest thing. It's like, but I'm not going to give special favor to Marilyn just because she's the one I deeply connect to.
Right.
If she doesn't have her stuff done, like when we had a deadline, I'm sorry, there's business
You're still gonna
transactions.
get in trouble.
I know. It's like, just because Trinity doesn't go over and do certain things, I don't go like, oh, you're my favorite, I'm gonna go specialize. I'm like, no. If you all need discipline, you all need discipline. If you all need praise, you all need praise. I just need to contextualize it to your way
Yeah.
to go
Yeah.
over and do that. And we teach that through the marriage book, and we'll eventually get our family book out there. Teach on how to contextualize your love based on your style. So it's the same
Hey,
thing. So, but
there
yeah,
you
it's
go.
definitely some relationship. Even Jesus, yeah, he had his favorites, but those were the most intimate people, the three
Hmm.
that were in the inner circle. He loved them all, but the thing is that he had his favorite, because it probably was an easier relationship. He's not like gonna say my favorite was Judas. He loved him, but it's probably not his favorite. Like, hey, that man,
Hmm.
he just threw me for 30 pieces of silver. It's like, yeah,
Right.
I'm on.
Right. Then my next question is, when you wrote your part, since you have had quite the journey, can you give us a little snippet of what your chapter is about?
Yeah, it's basically, I called it the Great American Scream Machine. I have to go double check my chapter. I've been writing so much lately, but I think I called it the Great American Scream Machine because the Great American Scream Machine had 7 loop-de-loops on there. This was before the bigger coasters came out. This was like years ago. Thought I was gonna. Okay, so yeah, so the Great American Scream Machine has 7 loops, and I talk about the 7 twists and turns and loops I went on. There's actually, man, I thought I was gonna burp. Whatever. So yeah, so that roller coaster goes so fast. People have said in rumor that you could literally go fast enough and throw up on yourself. Part of my life felt that way. I did these things that I thought that were gonna be amazing, and they were fast, and then I threw up on myself, and I'm like, how did I do that? I thought this was gonna be amazing. So I shared through those twists and those turns, and I labeled the parts about like, hey, going up and then hitting that first loop. And that first loop was getting out of the military. And then the second loop was talking about like almost getting a divorce and then almost losing my kids. I don't even share everything. I share the major stuff that's in there. Like I almost even got arrested because of how, this church thought I was disciplining my kids incorrectly, even though they had medical issues. So they took their medical issues, thought it was abuse issues, and they were going to send me to jail for 20 years. And then when
What?
CPS came out, they said, you have the best parenting we've seen like ever. And I'm not trying to brag. They literally said those words. And they said, we have wasted taxpayer dollars and time on this. And then I come to find out the resource just didn't want to go over and call and ask me. So then we had a conversation afterwards, and he said, what would you do in my space? I said, I know the laws. I would have, this is the law, and I would have met the intent of the law. And if you have X amount of time before this happens, then you could have called, text, email, or sent me a pigeon, some type of way
Mhm.
to contact me. And they
Right.
said, I didn't think about that. I said, you're high level in this world. You need to think of this type of thing. But we've gone through those roller coasters, and I still hung out with the man afterwards. I still went over and loved on the man afterwards. So just because sometimes we get thrown up upon or
Mhm.
ourselves doesn't mean we can't go over and do that. So I talk bits and pieces about that and how it eventually gets out. Am I all through all the Great American Scream Machine? No, not yet. And we're never going to get off the total roller coaster until our
No.
life is over. But the
Right.
thing is that we can go over and have that person in the other seat with us and sharing. Because even when you see those videos when they take the person, they're like the freak out person,
Hmm.
they're a lot better at least with their person than they would be by themselves. If they just got thrown in there and strapped in by themselves, it'd be a way worse ride. So
Yeah.
sometimes we have to go through those loop-de-loops to go get to the blessing, the adrenaline, whatever it is. And that's how I relate it to, is I basically took like the Great American Scream Machine roller coaster and made my story into 7 little parts.
What's your superpowers?
I would say my superpower that I have learned is that to shut my mouth and adjust, because I naturally will just go over. And it took me years, even getting certified as a behavior consultant, is to learn to shut up and adjust. Because I
Now,
think
why
that's the
would you
biggest.
shut up to adjust to what?
It's everything. Like I need to sometimes shut up and adjust to my wife to go love on her. I need to shut up and
Oh,
adjust.
okay.
I need to shut up and adjust to my kids and not just do what I want to do. Shut up and adjust at work, even though, despite I think it's stupid, that the leadership is there for a reason and empowered. I mean, shut up and adjust even during a book collab, and you think there's gonna be, hey, cover is gonna be easy. That was one of the biggest battles. I had to shut up and adjust because I'm like,
Mm,
it's more for all of you and for the community at large than it was for me. So I
right.
wasn't going to go there. So learning how to shut up and adjust. And that's for me specifically. Anybody that's a mouth thinker is naturally going to say what's on their brain. And if you go over and do, you're going to work yourself in more harm than help. So if you are like my style, you're outgoing, you're people oriented, you like to go over and speak and teach,
Hmm.
sometimes you need to shut up and adjust.
Gotcha. And so that's just one. What about your other two?
My other two superpowers is I think my ADHD gives me a lot of superpower in the sense of connecting with a lot of people. I mean, I never thought I'd win the number one influencer at the military influencer conference last year. But because I love connecting with people and I'm ADHD, I was in that app and was able to connect and fast think and do some unique contests. And that's how I was able to win now taking my wife to military influencer conference. So I'd say my ADHD with connecting with people is my next superpower. Because this
Okay.
collab wouldn't be possible going over and trying to, because our long term goal with Learn and Live from the prayer room to the boardroom is to see people's lives converted in their soul, in their marriage, in their place. And we have a specific number of goals that we want to see 10,000 marriages transformed. We want to see 1,000 families transformed. We want to see 100, no, it's 100,000 marriages, it's 10,000 families, and it's a thousand businesses to be transformed and thriving. So, and that you have to learn to shut up and adjust to go over and have that happen. If we want 100,000 marriages transformed in legacy and not going through divorce, each marriage is going to look different. We're going to have to learn
Yeah.
how to shut up and adjust to have that happen. So, I would say, yeah, that's for that.
And your third one?
My third one is, I would say, my God and my family, because my God kicked me in the cojones in 2013. I go through that briefly in the chapter. And it was through my wife telling me how much I sucked and how much I needed to be with Jesus and go through my mess. Him going over and guiding my steps and utilizing her. That's would be the third superpower, which overall that is the ultimate. It conquers both of them. It's just that without his provisions and his faithfulness with the wife that he's given me, then we wouldn't be able to go over and do this because we don't want to be that just person that's successful in one room. We don't. We don't want to be just
No.
successful in one room because I mean, I've been almost homeless in a dollaraire compared to a billionaire, and I've had better times in all those rooms. Not saying that money can't go over and be successful, but if you're not being thriving when you're at your last dollar, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, practically, and everything else, even though fiscally you might not be, you go over and it's going to be hard when the money comes in because that money, success, fame, and everything else will clout you because you can be righteous and rich. Most people get that confused. Like, what? Righteous and rich? You can be right with God and people and be rich? Yes, because you're utilizing the resources to help his kingdom and also help his people. And even if the people don't want the kingdom, you can still give general blessings to people. And you
Right.
also can be righteous and poor. So when I was in an airport one time and I only had a couple bucks to my name, and I got blessed and taken care of, I had a better time with those $3 that were in that thing when I got stuck in an airport in the middle of a snowstorm than I've had with tons of money. So you can be both righteous and poor and being a good steward, and righteous and rich and going and being a good steward. So we want you to thrive no matter where your dollar account is, because if you're a dollaraire or a billionaire, you can go over it and be right and then serving. So
So overall, you're saying with your God connection, You literally shut up and adjust with what God was saying to be able to succeed in the other two superpowers.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, because it's even us, we stopped because I was such a pusher to go over and go places. And we were looking at going another place. We were thinking about going to Florida. And the Lord convicted me in August 1st specifically and say, we're always hearing about guide your steps, but talking about guiding your stops. And this was a place that I need to be planted to go over and to serve more people. So I had to shut up and adjust, because if I would have said, oh, I'm not supposed to stay here, I'm supposed to move to Florida or move back to Arizona, I'm like, we would have never met Dr. Ken. Wouldn't be able to go then see him in person in those particular things. I would have been in a job that would have been like maybe more lax, but I would have not been in the right place to go meet those people.
Right. Where are you at?
We're in Dover, Delaware.
Delaware. Okay.
See, everybody has to think about it. It's so small, but it's the first state. And how do you change it? Because everybody thinks of it, it's like the first state, but it's actually considered the last state because nobody thinks about it anymore. And I want to do that and change veterans' lives and say, hey, if we're the first state, let's be the first state of impact on how veterans transform. Let's just be the first state to go over into how do we thrive from the prayer room to the boardroom.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, so I would say, yeah, shut up and adjust. I mean, that's for me personally. Some people, it's the exact opposite. So please take this in hindsight and say, hey, if this is for you, take it. If not, chuck it out, because it's what's best for your walk, wherever your veteran walk is. That's the most important, because sometimes we take things that people say and then we take it for ourselves and then it doesn't apply. And then we're mad. And we're not mad. We're not just mad at the people. We're mad at God or whoever else is in between. And then we realize, like, that wasn't for you. I almost didn't get married because I tried to follow somebody's wisdom, and I'm like, wait a minute, I gotta learn how to shut up and adjust, because I would hear somebody and I'd be like blah blah blah, and I didn't get a chance to listen.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I have ADHD, and I'm just found out. I just tested. So I'm like, oh, that makes sense. That makes sense. But yeah, I think that I would like you to do two things before we close. One is to reach out to veterans that may be on the cusp of knowing, they have a story. They have lots of stories, but they just don't know how to bring them to life. And where should they really start? Should they start with you or go to reading different books? What's your suggestion?
My suggestion is to find somebody that you do trust. If you've seen this show and you trust me, you can connect with me. We give 20 minutes free for every veteran first time. So we do a consultation. It's trying to remember the name of it. We just call it a transformation consultation. And the first 20 minutes is about you. If you're ready to go in the prayer room, we'll talk about the prayer room. If you're ready to go into the bedroom, the bedroom. If it's holistic prayer room, the boardroom, we'll have that 20-minute conversation. But if I'm not for you, I'm not for you. Our job is to complete your mission to help you thrive from the prayer room to the boardroom. We might fit you, we might not. We'll go over and hope to help you find the resources there. If you're going to go look for books to go over and do that, if it's finding your mission, start your why, find your why. That's Simon Sinek. If you're looking at it from a Christian perspective, it's Chazown, Chazown. Again, if you forget any of these resources, send me a DM. I'll give you the information. That's the great thing about ADHD. My brain remembers it, and I'm going to text it. And it just depends on where you're at. So I always think that if you like me and you resonate with me, then a consultation to go over and do that. But if not, then we'll go find you the best place for you to go over and thrive. Like if you've been deployed before, here's an example. If you've been deployed, you can go on a veteran trip out of outwardbound.org. So outwardbound.org gives a veteran a free trip for each deployment. So Vietnam, it could be any the generations, as long as you have a copy of orders, They're a great organization to spiritually, mentally, physically go reconnect to go deal with the junk. That's just an opportunity. There's actually a
Yeah.
horse ranch up in Maryland that I know about that does equine therapy. So if you got to find your place, your space, and your people to go over and do that. So that would be my overall advice: is find your space and your place and your people. Those are the three most important things as a veteran to go over and to walk out of this entire interview. Find your space, find your place, find your people.
Okay. Now, my last question is, when you have come to the end of time, what would be your most thankful moments? If God said to you right now, Daniel, I'm going to take you out tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
what would be your most thankful moments in your life?
I would say the transformation when my wife spiritually kicked me in the nuts. I would say that was the most thankful moment to realize I was in a mess and he was able to take me out of it so I could go over and serve. That would be the most thankful moment in the relationship I have with my wife and growing with my kids, because kids are always a journey. So those would be the most thankful things. If I get to live another 40 years, what I would see the most thankful thing is to see the people's lives be transformed. I would love to be, if I was on my deathbed, and not like a glory thing, just to go over and to see, kind of like how God gets to see his people, like in this mountain over here,
Mhm.
beautiful mountain over here, Asheville, North Carolina. I got to hike to the top. I was hurting like hell. And you get to see the perspective of how God goes over and sees the transformation. And I was able to see the transformation from the shot right here. And I'm the one that took the shot. So iPhone cameras are great. So I went over and took the shot, and I'm like, that's what I would look over and see, is the transformation that he allowed me to be a part of in that particular regard. I want to be
Okay.
that person that sees that transformation from the prayer room to the boardroom for your life. And I would love to see that as like an accomplishment in there. But if it's nothing else, if my wife transformed because God used her to transform me, and then we have that beauty of that in our kids, well, that's going to carry legacy and dividends. It doesn't have to be me, because the Lord can go over and use anybody to make transformation. And you just have to be okay that, hey, he's going to use you in your part.
Right. Everybody has a purpose. Okay. Now, I always ask this question at the end of the show. And since you're currently serving in as a reservist, it's kind of strange to ask. But if you had the opportunity under the current administration, would you actively go active to serve your country?
You mean like to go back active duty, maybe? I would say this season, no. I was saying this season, no. I think I'm at the point that I need to serve my new community of veterans. So I think that's most important right now, because here's the thing: we have our women veterans that are struggling with homeless, PTSD, sexual assault, sexual trauma, all those types of things. We have our just veterans in general going over and struggling in their marriages and families and everything else. I and other veterans cannot be a conduit to make change when you're in the active service, because your job as a soldier is to serve those people that are in the authority.
Mm-hmm.
So I can disagree with something, but I still need to go over and serve. That is a part of sacrifice, it's part of duty, that's part of honor and everything else. But no, I wouldn't go over and serve back, because I can't go and fight for those things that they cannot go fight for. Because once you do become a veteran, you can go lobby, you can go support nonprofits, you can grow businesses, you can do
Mm-hmm.
philanthropy, you can go change those things. When you're that soldier, you can do some of them. That I know some military people that do some amazing things with their time, and they're that hero. I know I can't. I'm a monotasker. I'm not a multitasker. I'm a monotasker. I do one thing and one thing at a time. And then if I'm pausing, then I go to the next step. So I need to be that veteran to go over and to change those things, because they somehow listen to us different when we're veterans than we're military. They're like, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
listening to a soldier, but they say, you've been through it, but you're still fighting for them in it and through it, then that's the difference. And
Yeah.
Food insecurity too. That's another one. I'm trying to go over and help with that because I've had food insecurity issues, So those types of things. I mean, I would say no. I wouldn't go back to active duty. The benefits are nice. The camaraderie is great, but no, I'm ready to retire. So once we're fully done with my medical, then I'm ready to go. So and now that I'm doing it differently, I have that transformation mindset. Even if I go through trials, I know if I'm a dollarer or a billionaire, I'm going to thrive because of
Right.
him and because of what he's given me.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing. I know you didn't quite know what all I would be asking, and I hope I gave you some different questions than you're used to.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you being open and honest, because that's one thing we all can tell is when somebody's giving us BS. And so when you hear somebody being honest about what their trials, what their service was, you get a connection, and you could go, okay, I get that. So again, I would reach out, and if you have any questions and would like to learn about how to share your story and be a service to a veteran, contact Daniel Faust. And what is your DM?
What is my DM? You mean my direct messenger?
Yeah, you said DM me.
Oh
And
yeah. So
so,
you can on these QR codes, you can go get the book. You can also find me on Facebook, Daniel Faust. Find me on Instagram, Daniel Faust, or War Hero to Superhero. LinkedIn is Daniel Faust. You can or anything with War Hero to Superhero or Daniel Faust, you'll go over and find. But these QR codes is the best way to connect with us as a community because we're doing a pre-buy right now. You
right,
get tons of benefits. We're giving to you. We're giving to the community. You might be able to go over and get a great Christmas gift. Go over and scan those. So if you're looking for an awesome Christmas gift, not just the book, but cold hard cash for your Christmas season, go over and scan those codes. You can get paper or digital. So whatever is your fancy, we'd love to
right.
go over and serve you.
Awesome. Alrighty. So thank you, everybody. Sorry about the technical difficulties that we encountered. And thankfully, the cheap headphones and probably re signing in got us all squared away. And again, if you have an opportunity, please go and check out Leave No Veteran Behind. You will find Daniel in there, you'll find me in there, and there's several other wonderful veterans that have shared their personal stories of triumph and their three superpowers. And so we thank you so much. And remember, is if you're contemplating suicide, stop, go and reconnect with a buddy, or if you need to go into the emergency, do it, because you do not want to leave any of the leftovers that your family or loved ones are going to have to deal with. And again, sharing is caring. Have a great night. Thanks, Daniel.
The U.S. has seen a staggering 70% increase in teen suicide. Children aren't equipped to handle these situations. There are so many resources for both teens and parents.
Are we an open family?
Yeah. I think we are. Is everything okay?
Yeah. I'm fine. Actually, there's something we should talk about. As a family. So, this is hard for me to talk about, but I I think it's important.